Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled you're tuning in today because we're going to unpack something absolutely fundamental to how we all learn, grow, and frankly, master really complex skills. We are looking at the immense power of formative assessment, and specifically, we're diving into its ultimate clinical application, DOBS. If you've ever wondered how the absolute best in the world move from just knowing the theory to flawless practical execution, well, it all comes down to the science of feedback.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the power of feedback, then look at the hard data behind it. After that, we'll enter the practical world of DOPS, contrast it with traditional logbooks, and finally, look at how it actually changes learner behavior. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The power of feedback. It is so much more than just a grade. When most of us hear the word assessment, right, we instantly think of that big final exam score. But formative assessment, that's totally different. It's the ongoing heartbeat of instruction. Researchers Gibbs and Shepard identified 3 key pillars for this. First, it informs trainees of their progress, essentially giving them a much-needed reality check. Second, it advises them on specific learning needs and resources. And third, it actively motivates them to engage. This mental checklist is exactly why feedback is absolutely central to effective medical education.
Section 2, the data behind feedback. Spoiler alert, 25 million students can't be wrong.
It's one thing to just, talk about the theory, but you really have to look at the sheer scale of the empirical evidence. Hattie did this massive meta-analysis encompassing over 1,800 studies and roughly 25 million students. And what he found was incredible. He compared the baseline effect size of typical schooling, which is about 0.40, to the effect size of feedback, which came in at 0.79. That means feedback literally almost doubles the impact on student achievement. And the biggest boost? That comes from giving information about a highly specific task.
So you might be asking, does this actually hold up in the high-stakes world of medical education? Absolutely. A comprehensive review by Volosky and colleagues found that an incredible 74% of medical education studies showed a positive effect just from feedback alone. And when combined with other interventions, it was effective 77% of the time. The data here is just undeniable.
Section 3. Enter DOPS, the practical application and really the ultimate feedback vehicle. Now let's talk about a specific tool developed over in the UK that actually puts all of this data into practice for postgraduate medical trainees. It's called DOPS, or Direct Observation of Procedural Skills. By definition, this focuses on evaluating trainees by observing them directly in the workplace setting. I really want to emphasize that last part. This isn't happening in some quiet, sterile simulation lab on a Saturday afternoon. This is happening right in the middle of real, dynamic, and let's face it, usually stressful clinical environments. And look at this highly structured time frame. DOPS is generally expected to require exactly 15 minutes of direct observation time, which is then immediately followed by 5 minutes dedicated solely to feedback. It forces this high-stakes moment where that essential feedback loop is guaranteed to happen. Plus, it's not just a one-off event. Trainees are assessed by multiple clinicians on multiple occasions throughout their training, just to make sure the evaluation is reliable.
So what exactly are they doing during those 15 minutes? Common procedures include things like endotracheal innovation, nasogastric tube insertion, administering IV meds, venipuncture, peripheral venous cannulation, and arterial blood sampling. And actually, while this is mainly for postgraduates, Pockert and colleagues have even used similar frameworks for undergraduate basic surgical skills. These aren't just random checkboxes. These are absolutely critical clinical interventions where that 5 minutes of targeted feedback directly translates to future patient safety.
Right, so how do they actually score this? It's definitely not a simple pass or fail. DOPS uses a very precise 6-point rating scale to map out a trainee's true ability. If they get a 1 or a 2, they're below the expected level. A 3 means they're hitting borderline competency. A 4? That means they perfectly meet expectations. And a 5 or 6 means they're actually performing above expectations. This kind of granularity allows for that highly specific, task-based feedback that Hattie's massive dataset proved is so effective.
Section 4. DOPS versus traditional logbooks, a major shift in assessment paradigms. To truly appreciate what a game-changer DOPS is, we really have to look at the antiquated status quo it's replacing, the traditional logbook. Now, both of these methods record procedures, sure, but logbooks are usually just designed to prove a trainee survived a minimum number of cases. They're often unobserved, and getting structured feedback, that's barely even expected. DOPS, on the other hand, is entirely focused on true competency through direct observation and guaranteed feedback. Basically, the logbook asks, did you do it 10 times? But DOPS asks, how well did you do it and how can we make you better next time?
Section 5, changing learner behavior, because ultimately, the proof is in the practice. It is one thing to change the rules of assessment on paper. It's a whole different ballgame to see if it actually rewires a student's daily habits. Well, a 2006 study by Birch and colleagues looked at a fourth-year medical clerkship using directly observed encounters. Because these students knew they were going to be watched and guided, their behavior totally changed. They actually started doing what's called blinded patient encounters, intentionally challenging themselves by interviewing patients without peeking at their medical records first. They also studied way more strategically, actively reading up on ward topics specifically relevant to their patients. The formative assessment literally directed their daily behavior.
To back this up even further, let's briefly look at a totally different domain. Dreesen and van der Vleuten introduced portfolio assignments with active peer and tutor feedback in a legal skills program. Now, this program had previously suffered from really poor attendance and prep, but once they introduced that feedback loop, the result was a massive twofold increase, literally a 2x spike in the time students spent preparing for their sessions. When learners know for a fact they're going to receive targeted specific feedback on their actual performance, they put in twice the effort up front. Which brings us to our final thought for today. Whether you're in medical education, corporate training, or just teaching a classroom full of students, I want you to take a hard look at your own environment and ask yourself this. Are we just tracking minimums, or are we truly observing to improve? Are we handing out the equivalent of logbooks and just hoping for the best, or are we guaranteeing those crucial 5 minutes of feedback that the data absolutely proves will change a learner's trajectory forever? It is a massive shift in mindset, but man, it is one well worth making. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer and keep learning.